Something just cracked wide open in West Coast hip-hop, and the shockwave is aimed straight at the throne. Because at this very moment, sources deep inside the game's own security detail are quietly whispering that Jason Taylor is locked inside a studio, sharpening what could become the most humiliating diss record of his entire career. And the target sitting in the crosshairs is none other than Kendrick Lamar himself. Let that sink in for a second. Not a subliminal, not a stray bar buried in the third verse of some deep-cut nobody streams. A full, loaded, aimed and cocked diss record pointed at the man who just conquered the entire rap game. The man who dismantled Drake in front of the whole planet. The man whose GNX victory lap is still echoing across every speaker from Compton to Copenhagen. And the same game who spent the last month swearing on cameras, swearing on podcasts, swearing on his own children that he had nothing but love for Kendrick, is now, allegedly, cooking up war. If this is real, and every signal coming out of his inner circle says it is, then what we are about to witness may not be a rap battle, it may be a public burial. Here is the thing, family. The game's emotional weather forecast changes with the wind. One morning, he wakes up preaching peace. The next afternoon, he is typing under strangers' Instagram posts like a man possessed. And by nightfall, his security guard is leaking studio updates like a broken faucet. If you have been paying attention over the last several weeks, you already know the pattern. The pattern is the story. The pattern is the whole story. Because every single time Jason opens his mouth in public, he swears the beef is dead. And every single time he thinks nobody is watching, he lights another match. So the real question tonight is not whether the game is preparing a diss track. The real question is why a grown veteran of this culture keeps contradicting himself in front of the entire internet, and why he thinks anyone still buys the performance. Rewind the tape. Not that long ago, Jason dropped one of the loudest quiet threats hip-hop has heard in years. He typed in plain English that he was going to pull the curtain down on the entire circus, expose every so-called clown, and let the fans finally see what he claims he has been seeing for years. That was not a subtle post. That was a declaration of war dressed up as commentary. And here's the detail that everybody missed the first time around. Top Dog himself, the co-founder of TDE, the executive who helped mold Kendrick Lamar into a generational force, quietly reposted that comment. That is not nothing. That is a shot fired back through a silent nod. When Top Dog amplifies a threat aimed at his own artist, he is not co-signing it. He is acknowledging it. He is telling the game without saying a word, "We see you, we hear you, and the ball is in your court now." And Jason, being Jason, seems to have picked that ball up and started dribbling it toward a cliff. Because the very next move out of Camp Game was not a peace offering, it was a temperature spike. His security guard, the one they called G Magic, started reposting content from the Viral Way podcast, and specifically a clip of Glasses Malone laying out in painstaking detail why he believes the game secretly envies Kendrick. Envies him. Not respects him, not admires him, envies him. That is the word Glasses Malone used, and that is the word G Magic decided to amplify to his own timeline. Ask yourself something real quick. When your own security detail is out here reposting a peer publicly diagnosing you with envy, and you say nothing, do nothing, correct nothing, what is the audience supposed to conclude? Silence in that moment is not composure. Silence in that moment is confirmation. But it doesn't stop there, because minutes later, G Magic hit the timeline again with a second post, a photograph or a caption or a wink of an update. Whatever the exact package was, the message was the same. Not trying to upset anybody, but the game is in the studio right now, laughing emoji included. And that's the moment the whole industry sat up. That's the moment every hip-hop podcast host in America opened a fresh document. That's the moment we all knew that whatever peace treaty Jason was performing on his last few interviews was already burning in a trash can in the corner of that studio. Because you don't send your security guard to hype up a studio session at midnight unless you are trying to plant a seed. And the seed the game is trying to plant is that he is coming for the crown. Now, let me pump the brakes for a second and speak to you straight. That is a wildfire Jason Taylor cannot survive.
I'm telling you right now on the record, family. In a multiverse of a million branching timelines, in every single version of reality where Compton produces two of its most famous sons, there is not one, not a single one, where the game walks out of a war with Kendrick Lamar holding a trophy. It doesn't matter if he writes 300 bars. It doesn't matter if he writes 500 bars. It doesn't matter if he sits in that booth for the next 40 days and 40 nights and emerges with an entire double album of nothing but Kendrick disses. It won't land. It won't stick. It won't survive contact with the culture, because the culture already made its decision. The culture already voted. The culture already crowned the man from Compton with the pen that dismantled Drake, and no amount of veteran bar work from Jason is going to reverse that verdict. And I want to be careful here, because I have love for what the game has contributed. He is a cornerstone of the West Coast era. He is a name in the history book of Aftermath. His debut album is a piece of cultural architecture that shaped an entire generation of Los Angeles rap. I am not disrespecting the resume. I am reading the room. And the room in the year 2026 does not belong to Jason Taylor. The room belongs to Kendrick Lamar. That is not opinion. That is the scoreboard. And when you stare at a scoreboard that lopsided, the smart move is not to run onto the field swinging. The smart move is to sit down, take the loss with grace, and preserve your legacy for the next chapter.
But the game does not do smart. The game does emotional. And this is the part nobody in his corner wants to say out loud. Every time Jason fires off one of these coded threats, every time he leaks a studio update through his security guard, every time he types under a random Instagram post at 3 in the morning, he is not building intimidation. He is building a museum of moments the internet will use against him. Because here's the cold truth, my guy. Jason has been doing this exact routine for years. He has gone at Jay-Z. He is gone at Eminem. He is gone at half the executive class of modern hip-hop. And do you know what happened every single time? Nothing. Not a syllable. Not a subliminal. Not a mention. Because when a man cries wolf loud enough, long enough, the pack stops turning its head. That is the position the game has walked himself into. That is the trap his own reputation has built for him. And I want you to really sit with that, because it is the most damning fact in this entire saga. If the game genuinely dropped a full-length diss aimed at Kendrick Lamar tomorrow morning, and I mean a real one, a well-produced one, a Grammy-quality one, I would still bet the house that Kendrick Lamar does not respond. Not because Kendrick is scared. Kendrick Lamar is not scared of anybody breathing air on this planet, but because responding would elevate a battle that the audience has already decided is not competitive. Kendrick does not need to swing at Jason. The scoreboard is already the punishment. And that, right there, is the hidden humiliation the game has not accepted yet. The biggest disrespect in modern rap is not a diss track thrown back at you. The biggest disrespect is silence. And silence is exactly what he has been receiving for years. Now let me tell you what really turned my stomach in this whole saga. It was not the studio leak. It was not the envy accusation. It was the moment Stat Quo had to sit on camera and deliver Jason's talking points like a hostage reading a ransom note. If you saw the clip, you know what I am talking about. Stat Quo, a veteran, a respected voice, a man who has been in rooms most fans could not even find on a map, was forced to sit there and repeat almost verbatim that the game was eating good, living well, unbothered, laughing at the noise. And the whole time he was saying it, you could see it in his eyes. You could hear it in his voice. This was not conviction. This was choreography. This was a man delivering a script he did not write and probably did not agree with because his loyalty to the friendship demanded it. And even Justin, sitting right there, couldn't hide the awkwardness. Even Justin, the ultimate company man, had that split-second flicker on his face where you could tell his internal monologue was screaming, "Please, bro, do not make me say this out loud." Because when the game tells his people to go on air and paint him as unbothered, and then 24 hours later he is personally typing threats under Instagram posts, the whole PR structure collapses on itself. You cannot ask your homies to perform your composure in public while you personally shred it in private. That is not strategy. That is sabotage. That is a man setting his own team on fire and asking them to smile through the smoke. Let me widen the lens for a second, because context matters.
Kendrick Lamar is not just any rapper standing across the ring from Jayceon. Kendrick is the man whose album became a Pulitzer-winning cultural document. Kendrick is the man who took the biggest superstar in commercial rap and reduced him to a walking meme in the span of one summer. Kendrick is the man whose Super Bowl performance rewired what a mainstream stage could look like. That is not a pier for Jayceon to poke. That is a mountain, and mountains do not lose to men with pickaxes. That is the mismatch nobody in Jayceon's ears seems willing to describe out loud. And that is the mismatch the culture has already noticed, whether Jayceon acknowledges it or not. Because let's break down the mechanics of why a Game versus Kendrick war is a losing equation before a single bar is even written. Number one, the audience arithmetic is not on Jayceon's side. Kendrick's fan base spans generations, continents, and demographics. Jayceon's fan base, while loyal, is nostalgic, and nostalgia doesn't win rap battles in 2026. Number two, the executive backing is not on his side. TDE, Aftermath, Interscope, the entire machinery of the modern West is quietly aligned with Kendrick. Jayceon doesn't have a machine anymore. He has a security guard with an Instagram account. Number three, the narrative is not on his side. The story the internet has already written is that Kendrick is the once-in-a-generation lyricist and Jayceon is the veteran who missed his moment. That story is not going to be rewritten by a diss track. It's going to be reinforced by one.
And this is the part where the mirror needs to come out, because I would be doing this culture a disservice if I did not say it plainly. Jayceon, if any part of your team is listening, if any part of your circle still has the courage to tell you the truth, sit down, take a breath, look in the mirror, ask yourself the hardest question a veteran can ask himself. Maybe it is not the industry, maybe it is not TDE, maybe it is not Kendrick, maybe it is me. Because the pattern that has followed Jayceon Taylor through his entire career is not a pattern of enemies conspiring against him. It is a pattern of collaborators, executives, and peers gradually walking away from the same room. And when the same room keeps emptying every time you enter it, the common denominator is not the room. The common denominator is you. And this is where the story gets sadder, family, because there was a version of Jayceon that the culture wanted to protect. There was a version of him, the debut album Jayceon, the documentary era Jayceon, the West Coast lion who could stand next to Dr. Dre and hold his own, that we were all rooting for. But somewhere along the line, the mood swings started outrunning the music. Somewhere along the line, the internet posts started outweighing the studio sessions. And somewhere along the line, the culture quietly turned the page. That is not cruelty, that is consequence. And consequence is the one thing you cannot rap your way out of. Think about it from a legacy standpoint. The game's discography is genuinely respectable. The documentary is a certified classic. Doctor's Advocate held its own. LAX had moments. There is a lane in this culture where Jayceon Taylor could be spoken about the same way we speak about the elders, with reverence, with distance, with the calm respect the veterans earn when they age gracefully. But you cannot age gracefully if you're still swinging at kings 20 years into the game. You cannot age gracefully if your security guard is running your PR at midnight. You cannot age gracefully if every peer podcast is dissecting your envy like a case study in a psychology textbook. There is a version of Jayceon that walks away with the elder statesman crown, and that version is dying a little more every time G Magic hits post. Let me talk about G Magic for a minute, because I think the security guard deserves his own paragraph in this story. When you work for a rapper of Jayceon's caliber, your job is to protect the artist, not just physically, reputationally, emotionally, strategically. Your job is to be the wall that keeps the noise out, not the megaphone that lets the noise in. And what G Magic has been doing over the last several days is the exact opposite of protection. He has been reposting content that reinforces the envy narrative. He has been leaking studio updates that reinforce the desperation narrative. He has been, whether he realizes it or not, becoming the primary source of ammunition against his own client. That is not security. That is self-sabotage in a security uniform.
and somebody in Jason's camp needs to have the difficult conversation with him before this thing gets any louder. Now compare that to how Kendrick operates. Kendrick Lamar does not have a security guard tweeting his studio schedule. Kendrick Lamar does not have an inner circle diagnosing his rivals with envy on peer podcasts. Kendrick Lamar does not need an emissary to deliver his composure to the public. Kendrick Lamar delivers his message on his own timeline, and when he is silent, his silence is the message. That is the discipline gap. That is the culture gap. That is the professional gap between where Jason Taylor is standing right now and where Kendrick Lamar has been standing for the last decade. And that gap is not going to be closed by a diss track. That gap is only going to be widened by one. Real talk, my guy. Every generation of hip-hop has its cautionary tale. The veteran who couldn't read the room. The star who kept swinging at the new champion long after the new champion had moved on. The elder who mistook nostalgia for relevance and turned his own legacy into a punchline. And I don't want that to be Jason's ending. I really don't. Because Jason has given this culture too much to end up as the punchline in somebody else's victory lap. But that's exactly the road he's walking right now. And if nobody in his circle is going to tell him the truth, then the internet is going to tell him the truth in a way he cannot unhear. And the internet does not do gentle. Let's game this out. Suppose Jason actually releases the diss. Suppose G Magic teases it for 2 more weeks. Suppose the podcast circuit builds it up. Suppose the record drops on a Friday morning with a cinematic music video and a full press push. What happens next? Best case scenario for the game? The record trends on X for 6 hours. The fan base debates it for 2 days. The hip-hop podcasts break it down for a week. And then the entire moment dissolves into the next news cycle. Worst case scenario? Kendrick releases a single verse in response, dismantles the entire narrative in 90 seconds, and Jason becomes the punchline of a Grammy-winning follow-up. There is no scenario where the game wins this exchange. There are only scenarios where he loses quietly and scenarios where he loses loudly. That's the math.
And here is the part that should really haunt Jason's team if they are being honest with themselves. Every single peer he has publicly antagonized over the last 15 years has responded to him with the same weapon: silence. Jay-Z did not answer. Eminem did not answer. The executives he named did not answer. The producers he swung at did not answer. And that is not because they were afraid. That is because they understood a fundamental truth about celebrity conflict. You do not elevate a smaller opponent by engaging them. You do not give oxygen to a fire you would rather see burn itself out. And that is exactly what has happened to Jason's beef record over the years. It has burned itself out every single time. And this one, aimed at the biggest name in modern rap, is going to burn out the loudest. So where does that leave us tonight? It leaves us right here, standing at the edge of a diss track that may or may not drop, staring at a security guard who cannot stop tweeting, watching a veteran walk himself toward a cliff his own reputation built for him. If Jason actually releases this record, and if by some miracle Kendrick Lamar actually responds, then yes, we will finally get the definitive scoreboard moment the culture has been avoiding. But I would put money on Kendrick staying silent, because Kendrick already understands what the game refuses to accept. Some fights do not need to be fought, because the ranking is already decided. And let me leave you with this thought, because I think it matters. There is a version of this story where Jason Taylor puts the phone down, cancels the studio session, calls Kendrick privately, and rebuilds his legacy through humility instead of hostility. That version of the story ends with respect. That version of the story ends with a comeback record nobody saw coming. That version of the story ends with a veteran reclaiming his throne through wisdom, not war. But the version we are currently watching, the version being scripted in real time by G Magic's Instagram feed, ends in one place and one place only, with another silent no response from Kendrick Lamar, another humiliating internet moment for the game, and another chapter added to the growing archive of self-inflicted wounds. And here is a final wrinkle nobody in this conversation has raised yet. The rap game in 2026 is not the rap game Jason came up in. The audience is faster now. The judgment cycles are shorter. The receipts are digital and permanent. A misstep in 2005 could be buried under 6 albums and a decade of touring. A misstep in 2026 lives forever in a viral clip that resurfaces every time your name is typed into a search bar, which means every ill-advised Instagram post, every leaked studio update, every awkward proxy interview by Stat Quo, all of it becomes part of the permanent digital record of Jayceon's twilight years. And when future rap historians write the definitive book on this era, they're not going to spend much time on Jayceon's contributions. They're going to spend most of their time on the mood swings that ended his relevance. That is the tragedy hiding inside this whole story. The game is not just risking a loss to Kendrick, he is risking the shape of his own obituary. So tell me what you think, family. Am I lying? Is the game about to walk into a wildfire he cannot survive? Or is there a universe where Jayceon actually pulls off the impossible and knocks the crown off Kendrick Lamar's head? Drop your verdict in the comments. Tell me who you think is going to be standing when the smoke clears. Tell me if you think Kendrick even bothers to lift the pen. Tell me if G Magic keeps his job by the end of the month. Tell me if Stat Quo ever agrees to deliver another proxy message again. And if you're seeing me for the first time tonight, do me one favor before you leave. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and stay locked in. Because the second this diss track drops, or the second Kendrick Lamar breaks silence, you already know where the coverage is going to hit first. This is the story of the year, and it is only just beginning. Peace, family. Stay a legend.